Hey everybody, David the AI Guide, happy Tuesday. And today we're going to talk about an opinion piece in The Guardian about AI that was very interesting. And it's sort of an arcane area, but it makes sense. So let me tell you about it. Most of the biggest companies, many of them are public, meaning that they sell stock or bonds to the public shareholders on large exchanges like the ones on Wall Street. And these public companies, because they have people who are not directly involved with the company in any way, are required to do regular public filings in a variety of ways. One is what they call the 10K, which is a technical annual report. This isn't a glossy annual report with all the puffery and pictures and everything that these big companies put out, mostly digital now, but some printed. But what we're talking about is a very structured report with strict guidelines created by the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC in the United States, and comparable bodies worldwide. So John Harrington wrote this opinion piece for The Guardian, which, by the way, is an excellent news source. Why? Because it's independent and far less biased than U.S. News sources, which are disturbingly biased now. Think about that. In your Facebook feed, you're getting all bias all day, every day. I personally recommend that you not get your news from social media platforms, because you will not get objective news. That's definite. And there's been thousands of articles written on this at this point. But anyway, this particular piece was about those reports that are written by public companies, the annual one called the 10K, the quarterly, which is a smaller one for each quarter of the year, called a 10Q. And then there's other filings that tell the public what trading in the shares of the company, the top insiders at the company are doing. We're talking about the CEO, the COO, the CFO, the chief legal counsel, and all these top people at these huge corporations are frequently trading in the stock of their corporation. And there's a whole other story we could do here on that. But what the Guardian piece was specifically talking about is that all of these reports used to be read by human beings, of course. And they had some fascinating statistics in it. They said back in 2003, only about 5% of these reports were read by machines, machine being AI. And by 2016-17, just a few years ago, because these statistics always lag, they're always a few years old, but by this point, over 75% of the reading of these reports was done by algorithms as of 3 years ago, making it damn near 100% now. And what they were saying is that companies obviously have come to understand that, and machines read reports differently than people do. So companies have started changing these reports and the format and the way the reports are worded to be targeted to the AIs rather than people. Well, what does this mean in the real world? When it comes to the New York Stock Exchange now, the vast majority of shares traded on the New York Stock Exchange are algorithm traded, not people traded. So if you're an individual and you're buying and selling stocks or mutual funds or ETFs, which are exchange traded funds, on the New York Stock Exchange. You're a tiny minority now. And all the hedge funds and investment banks and all the insiders are using algorithms. Why? Because they trade millions and millions of shares and make money on fractions of a penny on these trades. But with millions of shares, it becomes millions of dollars, unlike individual trading. So what does this mean? Well, this means it gets harder and harder and harder for the individual investor to A, compete with the Wall Street entities, and B, understand these critical reports that are now being specifically manipulated to make them targeted to an AI algorithm and get a favorable story out of this algorithm about the company. So this is not good because, first of all, it means that companies have learned, despite the SEC's efforts, to create bias in these reports by targeting to algorithms and having them worded in a way that is looked at favorably by algorithms rather than reporting actual events. It also hurts individual investors in their ability to read and absorb this critical information. So there's been a big trend away from most people buying and selling individual stocks. And most people today have money in their 401k through their employer, and they're buying mutual funds or exchange traded funds. And most individual stock trading, there's clear exceptions, and I'll mention one, but most of it's done by the insiders on the street. So one of the exceptions, by the way, is the Motley Fool, which has a subscription-based service for individual investors that picks specific companies to invest in different sectors. So that's one that is targeted to the individual investor. And of course, Charles Schwab's pitch for years has been to the individual investor. But it's going to make it harder and harder and harder for individual investors to get the information they need to make good investment decisions. So again, in the very last video, we were talking about ethics and AI. This is another good area for ethical behavior to be injected into this process and the use of AI for the purpose of reading these reports and trading on them. So this is really, really important. We need fair, balanced, and truthful markets so that we don't have people spinning everything and then you put money into a company and it totally blows apart because it was all BS. So that's no good, and you lose all your money. That's no good. So something to think about again. And once again, on the job front, there's a lot of opportunity going forward, on both sides of the coin we just discussed. One is, of course, all the big investment houses, hedge funds, street banks and stuff are constantly hiring AI people. But also what we need is a robust AI environment on the opposite side, looking for these biases and disclosing them and getting the word out there. So there's a good startup opportunity, right? A subscription-based service to uncover biases in these financial reports caused by them being tailored to AI. So something to consider for those of you who might want to go out on your own, which I strongly encourage. So thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, and more breaking news all the time.